Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Healing Words podcast. What started as a book on leadership lessons eventually evolved into a dynamic business ministry. Earl and Penny Morrison are the founders and owners of Leading and Learning in Character, a professional development and mentoring company founded on Earl's extensive background in law enforcement, business, and his spiritual life. Earl joins us today for a discussion of his company. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so your business is founded on your background in law enforcement. You were very active in your business community and your spiritual life. Could you explain what those are and how that funneled into the business you started?
Sure. So, as a police officer, I was heavily involved in the community everywhere that I served. Back in 2014, I decided I wanted to be a police chief. That was my ultimate goal. God kind of blessed us with that the summer of 2014, and we went out to Central Texas. Uh, and about little over 2.5 years in, the political landscape changed. Of course, everywhere I'm at, especially as a police officer and then as a chief, serving the community, serving the public, serving everyone is really what your job is all about. And so, like I said, about 2.5 years in, the political landscape changed on us, and all the council members that had hired myself and my city manager, they got replaced. You can imagine when the folks that knew who you were and hired you and were with you along the way, and that gets changed, then all of a sudden that changes. And what happened was I found myself out of a dream job, looking for my next job, and kind of in disbelief because again we were in Central Texas in the hill country. Really our property that we had was all kind of, if you're going to play out the end of your career and your life, that was where it was for
Where you want it, right?
and it had all just kind of fell in place. And then we're like, okay, we left before we finished a job that we really liked. We didn't achieve everything that we wanted to. We were in the middle of that. And so in it, just like everything else, you're trying to figure out, what am I supposed to learn now that I don't have this? And then the other thing that I don't know that a lot of people understand this, writers do, but when you write books, sometimes a healing process. I always tell people to write things down, even if you're not going to write a book. If you're going through something, and especially if you're angry or frustrated and you're just trying to find your way, write it down, because it gives you an avenue to kind of get your feelings out there, and then you can process some of that frustration and that anger and some of those other things where I'm not taking it out on anybody, but I am getting it out. And so it allowed us to do that. And then as I'm writing that, I'm like, how do I get this? What if somebody doesn't see my book? What if they don't get that in front of them? How can I make sure that we push that, or we develop something to be able to do that? And that is how we ended up, creating Leading and Learning with Character, because we didn't want it to just be a book and stop at that. And then you kind of take it for granted that maybe somebody will pick it up and maybe they won't, but to give them another avenue. Because again, the way we get over things and better and through them is we learn our lessons through whatever things that we go through. And the reality of that is that God's always teaching us lessons.
Right.
It's how we deal with them and whether we realize that he's teaching us something. Because if I look at it in that aspect, then I'm always willing and open to learn something. But if I look at it in anger and frustration and all that other stuff, then I shut down. And even I'm not listening to God at that point.
Right. And particularly if you look at it as if you are a victim.
Yeah. And
Exactly. Because in your case, you were the police chief,
yep.
you were released, you became a police chief again,
Yes.
and then it happened again.
Yes, ma'am.
But by that time, you probably, because you were writing it down, you were aware that something has to be going on here.
For sure. I mean, when you're in it, you're kind of like, really, is this happening again? But then as you process through that, it's like I tell people today, here's the thing. Some people would look at it and say, oh my gosh, how are you not so angry right now? How are you not frustrated? But it goes like this. If I'm going to fret, if I'm going to trust God when everything is good, I have to trust God when the stuff doesn't work out the way I want it to, because it's working out the way He wants it to. Whether I pick up on that and I learn anything from that or not, his plan is there. I just have to recognize that He has a plan and keep moving forward. And that is one of the hard things for us, because the second time it was only 7 months. And you're thinking, oh my goodness, here we go again. And it was even further in the state of Texas. And if you're familiar with the state of Texas, it's big. And it was 4.5, almost 5 hours west, kind of in the middle of nowhere. That now I took my family, and he's saying, okay, yes, I brought you here, but this is not where the long-term place is. Now, again, processing through that when it's happening, you have to understand that He's got you. Uh, Anybody that doesn't have that, I don't know how they would process through some of those things, to be honest with you.
Right. A lot of anger.
For sure.
Now, when you were discussing in another interview your termination the second time, you realized that what happened there was, although they were saying we want change, we want change, they weren't really ready for change.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And part of that is like this. So during the recruiting process, that's really all we talked about was change and bringing a new vision and forward thinking, and change the way that they've been doing it, reconnect with the community, reconnect with the police department and the other city entities. And, you know, when you go through a series of changes, because change is necessary no matter where you're at, and it changes progress if you embrace it the right way. And part of that was is that they thought they were, but it's not easy. You've got to put in work. You've got to recognize the need that's there, which they kind of did, and know that, okay, here's the game plan, which was developed way before I got there. I had a 1 year game plan, and we were doing that. But when you're in the middle of that and you haven't experienced it, it's going to be hard before it gets easy. You're going to go through some difficult times, because again, when you're making changes and you're embracing those changes, and also look at changes as improvements, and when you're making improvements, you kind of got to get rid of some of the things that you've been doing. You got to let go of some of the old ways. You got to let go, and sometimes that's people.
Mm,
It's
wow.
people, it's processes, it's things, it's policies. And when you want that change, it's easy to say that, but then when you're in the middle of making those things happen, and you realize that there's a lot of effort that comes with that, that's what I mean when I say they weren't really ready, because they didn't understand the effort that it was going to take, that one person can't do it. One person can't come in and make tremendous changes for an organization or a group without support. And people have to understand that when you make those improvements, it's hard, because you do have to. I mean, it's the same thing with us when we're thinking about letting go of bad habits, or things that it's like things that I like to eat that I think are really good, but they're bad for me. I've got to process that the right way. And it's kind of that same thing, is that if I want to lose weight, if I want to work out, if I want to do those things, I have to change something.
Right.
And then I have to be intentional, disciplined to stick with it if I want that desired outcome, that result that's way out here. What happens to us is that when it gets hard, what do? We shut down. We revert back to the way that it's comfortable for us,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we stop trying.
Right.
And then we become a victim, because I couldn't do this because this, well, it was hard. Well, life is hard. I mean, there is nothing in the Bible, and I'm no scholar, but there is nothing in the Bible that promises us that life is going to be easy. Especially when you're a child of God, when you become one of those kingdom members, there
Right.
is nothing there that says life is going to be easy. Matter of fact, there's
Hmm.
some things in there that say because of that, it might be harder.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so let's back up a bit. Your company offers professional development and mentoring for organizations and individuals, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How do you approach them differently? When you are called in, hired to help an organization, what are the first few things that you're looking at? And how does that differ from when someone says to you, hey, I would like you to help me with this?
When I'm looking at organizations, some of the questions that I'll ask, and a lot of those actually come from when people come as an individual to some of my classes. Because when we're talking about our topics, I always have them go through, and a couple of my popular ones are 2-day classes, and which is really good because it allows us to kind of evaluate the first day, the beginning of the second day, and the second day at the end of the second day. But we talk about effective communication. We talk about learning from our mistakes. We talk about embracing change, building a strong foundation, making good decisions, teamwork. And so when I'm talking to them, I'm asking that question, what do you do well? But then what do you think across the board that you struggle with as an individual? And what about your organization? So
Mm.
when I go into those organizations, I usually have an idea based on that of what they're struggling with. And the reality of it is, I could probably say 70 to 80% is a communication struggle
Organizations?
of organizations, which
Okay.
which which then also would tell you that it's also a struggle for an individual.
Mm-hmm.
The other one that we have with organizations is accountability and consistent accountability across the board. And then the other one that's pretty popular is the topic is your attitude, your responsibility. And basically that means that my attitude is not developed because of everything that I've been through. I don't get to use that as a crutch to be a bad person. I don't get to use that as a crutch to go treat everybody like junk. And so when I know that, when I get to those topics, when I'm teaching that, we may go a little bit deeper because I already know that that's a struggle. And then the piece that comes with the follow up and the mentoring is that, okay, how do we work through those? How do you get better at the communication? How do you get better at teamwork? How do you get better at the attitude piece? And it goes to is like the takeaways are you don't unless you make an effort. Doesn't matter which one it is, because there's nothing that I would say, there's nothing that I can say that's magical. I can tell you these issues, I can explain them to you. I can even tell you when I was that way, which is why I think it's kind of unique because I'm telling you that I used to be all the issues. It used to be me. I used to be the toxic person. I used to be the negative person. I used to be the person that did not lead people in the right direction. And so I know how you can
Recognize
make
it.
that switch, right?
Mhm.
Because it's not magical, but you do have to be intentional. You have to be disciplined to do that. And so that's how you approach it for me is that just, I'll ask those questions and usually people will know. They'll talk more once they understand. Basically, once they understand that I'm a credible person, that I've experienced some of those things, it's like with anybody. I mean, it's same thing with your pastor. Your pastor's up there teaching a message, and you're like, does he even know? Has he even experienced any of the same things that I have? Because he's in the ministry. I mean, that's the thoughts that we have sometimes. But when we know, hey, that he's human just like we are. He's experienced the same struggles. He understands it more. Now I have a connection that I can get you to kind of follow me now and understand where I'm coming from so that you understand that we can get to that desired outcome and make that positive change.
Okay. All right. So I have a question. Knowing, as you said, change takes time, it takes some time to change. When are you certain as a trainer that the person that you're trying to help, they're just not ready? Are there signs, are there clues? How are you able to make the determination that we just haven't given enough time or they're just not ready?
It's a by individual thing, and part of that is that what I always have to tell people is that until you're ready to let go, until you let go of the past and stop bringing it up and just say, okay, that's the big thing, is that you got to let go of that. And so some people do need more time, but there's also some people that will just drag that U-Haul full of stuff with them. And so part of that is what I tell them, Pamela, is this: I'm going to tell you things that you need to hear, maybe not necessarily what you want to hear. So I've told them, hey, look, you got to drop that U-Haul full of that junk and let it go, because if you keep dragging it, you are never going to make that positive change and that progress to where you want to get to, because people that are a perpetual victim. They're always dragging something to happen, and I've talked to people and they tell you a story and you're like, wow, that is crazy. When did that happen? 15 years ago. And I'm like, 15 years ago? That person that was with you probably don't even remember that. And so, it's that some need time, some just need the tough love for a minute and say, hey, look, if you're the only way that you can move forward is by letting go. I don't care where you're at. I don't care what entity you're in. That is the only way you move forward. Because if you drag everything with you, you never make the progress that you should or could.
All right. So your company is based on four primary scriptures. Could you explain those to me and to our listeners, and why they're important to you?
Okay. So the first one is Joshua 1:9, be strong and courageous. And it's basically, God's telling Joshua at that time, have I not told you to be strong and courageous? Do not be afraid. Do not be dismayed, because I'm going to be with you. And, it was one of my favorite verses for a while. And then in 2015, when I was the chief in that first city, we lost an officer in the line of duty. And so it really hit home then of be strong and courageous, because in dealing with that, as the leader, as the chief of police, you still have to move that whole organization forward and process through what just happened. That's a challenge. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Uh, but you're not just leading that department, you're also leading the rest of the city and the
Mm,
community. And honestly, you're leading other people that may experience something similar, because they're watching how you're dealing with that and how you're handling it. And so that be strong and courageous, I mean, it just fit, and it was just something that I clung to, that my wife and I clung to, because we knew that was where the strength came from. And that was where my courage came from, to put one foot in front of the other and to lead that group of people through that worst possible time that they're going to have.
okay. And First Peter 5:7.
So 1 Peter 5:7, it was one of those that, when we found ourselves again, like, what in the world just happened? We're in the second phase of uh, where do we go from here? Um, it had been another one of those that was my favorites, but it really came to life because, like, we have to put our cares on him. He cares for us. He does want us to be successful. He has a plan for us, and it's not to be junk. It's not to not be prosperous. He has a plan for us. We just got to put our cares on him and trust that he has us, and that's where that came into play.
Okay, and Proverbs.
27:17.
Yes.
Iron sharpens iron. My mission in life is to mentor, to help other people, and iron sharpens iron. We're to take care of each other, and that's that mantra that we have. We're doing that. Is that at the end of the day, that's really the ultimate goal that we have with our business, is to help other people be better. That's where the mentoring comes in. That's where that Mentoring for Life book came in, and it just fits that verse.
Okay, and there's one more that I don't have here.
It is Proverbs 19:14. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Goes all the way back to just that one we kind of just added because of, as we're processing through, what are we going to do next? Is it time to retire? with your day job and pursue your business. And as I'm teaching people, I want people to understand that everything that we think, say, and do is huge. If we think bad things, if we put junk in, what's going to come out? Junk. And if I can look at it this way, is that everything that I think, say, or do, I want to be pleasing to God, then I'm going to look at it a whole different way. It's almost like you have this discipline in place right here, because I want it to be pleasing to Him. I don't want to dishonor Him. I don't want to have someone look at me and say, "How can you be a child of God if you're thinking, saying, and doing the things that you do?" So again,
Right.
it's one of those that keeps us intentional and disciplined to be positive, and to be encouraging in the things that we think, the things that we say, and the things that we do. Because I never again want to be a person that has influence on somebody in a negative way. I don't want to be
Mm.
the influence that leads somebody down the wrong road or causes them to stumble in their relationship with God, or in anything else.
As a professional development expert professional, are you concerned about some of the way character presents itself in society now?
Well, character is always a challenge. And I think we have that problem because we have people that don't keep themselves disciplined and intentional to maintain their character, which is another topic that we talked about. Never compromise your character. Because what happens is that sometimes we do to make it easier on ourselves. Look, I would rather be out of a job all day long and know at the end of the day that I never compromised my character. I never changed my thought process. I kept it the way that it should be. Instead of, I changed it so that I could fit in. I changed it to go along. I changed it because this group of people over here said that I should, or would like me more. I think we get ourselves in trouble as leaders when we do that, because if you look all over the place, people are compromising their character and who they are. We lower the standard instead of keeping it or raising it. And for me, it's like when you're called to lead, I don't think you should ever lower the standard. If you do anything, it raises the standard and it raises your responsibility. Eh,
So that we make sure that we're not, that it's not just a buzzword. What is our working definition of character?
So for me, it's like it's character and your morals are the things that you say are allowable, and you're okay with. So behaviors, you're okay with a certain behavior. That's your character.
Sure. Mm.
So integrity, honesty, those things, that those build those are your character, who you
Mhm.
are. And
Mhm.
it's those are the things that we say are okay. So when I look at somebody that has a negative behavior or a toxic behavior, or even if you wanted to go and put a pin in a criminal or illegal behavior, okay, if I'm okay with that, then at some point I'm allowing that to be what's shaping my morals and my character. And it's so what you as an individual say that you allow, that you say is okay to go out and do and go out and act and go out and say.
Okay. So just in case some of our listeners might have missed it, you worked in law enforcement for years, you got your dream job as a police chief, was terminated, you were hired again as a police chief, terminated from there. All along, you've worked in your church, served in ministry, very active and involved in church, very active and involved in the community. So, in the business community, I want to ask you, tell some ways that you saw God's hand in all of that. Some of the good, some of the what seemed at the time not so good, but it was clearly God's hand.
So, the crazy thing is that when you become a police chief, and I'm sure there's other entities, city managers, or those when you come in there, I did not realize how political that was going to be when it came to the community and dealing with the ministry and the clergy communities, the different churches and aspects. Um, we had served in the same church for 13 years when I left to be a police chief. And so I thought, well, I was an elder, we really, my wife was the children's coordinator at one time. And so we're like, okay, one of the first things on our list was we're going to find a church. Well, it was so politically uh, charged that we never really did. Actually, we spent 9 months in a Spanish church because they welcomed us. They put their music up with the Spanish version, the English version, to serve us.
Hmm.
Uh, it was different, but we knew God was in there. There was a reason they needed us to be there, and kind of we needed to be there because again we were trying to find a church home. Um, that was a difficult piece because for people that we served, we were in a home group. When it was time to be at church and time to teach or lead, we were involved in it. I taught men's groups. We did all kind of stuff, and then to not have that and try to figure out, okay, we know this is missing. And then when we went out in West Texas, it was even worse. I mean, every time we visited a church, I had people come up to me, "Hey, when are you going to join this church? We're just visiting right now." And then when you saw them, "Oh, how come you haven't joined the church?" And we're like, "That's not why I'm joining the church. Got to be a good fit for us. Got to be a good fit for the kids." And then after that, when we moved here, and we've been in Oklahoma, August will be 5 years. We were visiting churches, but then COVID hit and just kind of threw a big wrench
Yeah.
into everything, changed everything. Nobody was meeting. And so we, kind of did the online stuff because nobody had church service going. And so what I did was I used that as an excuse to not have to connect, to not have to get involved so that I didn't experience some of the same things that I experienced in those other two communities. And so we built the barriers and set back. And then as my kids started getting older, last year, my oldest daughter, she started wanting to be involved more. And we're still processing through this whole job shift and understanding
Yeah,
that,
because that takes time to get over.
yes. And you don't want to commit because what if I've got to leave again? Because that's been the pattern, right? At least that's what we were doing in here. And so just probably the end of last year, the beginning of this year, end of 23, beginning of 24, now started thinking of like, she's getting it. She's a senior. She's doing dual credit. She's got herself a job. She's interacting with the youth group. And I'm still sitting here like, I don't want to commit. I've got another daughter that's a year younger than her, and she's playing off of dad. She's not wanting to commit. She's not wanting to do anything. And my whole thing is that I've just led my own child in the wrong direction because I put the barriers and I did that. And so I tell people I sat on the bench, and I'm not a bench setter. People that know me know that is not where I like to be. For 2 years, 2 years in this same church that we had been visiting. And I finally said, I got to go talk to the pastor and I got to go talk to the youth pastor because I have to make an effort. And so we finally did. I finally did. And it's still a thing in progress because that's just been a few months.
Yeah.
But knowing that I built the walls and then caused my own children to stumble in that and gave them an excuse. I mean, how am I going to get upset with them when they followed the example that I set?
Right.
That's the piece that I don't want to do for other people. And so you got to be really careful. And it was so hard because we did love the connection. We did love, being part of the church and connecting with home groups and teaching and doing that because my wife will tell you that's when I'm at my best. When I'm able to teach and develop and help others and
Hmm.
mentor them, that's my element. That's when I feel like, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But I mean, again, when you set that example and you see that, and it's like, okay, I don't want to do that again. And so now I've flipped that, and we were being very intentional to make sure that the example that I'm setting is right, even for my family, not just for those out
And that's a powerful picture of the work that you do. You're applying the work that you do to
there.
what
Yeah,
you're
it's
doing.
crazy that I have to do it to myself,
I
right?
know.
But sometimes, when you look in that mirror and you don't like what you see, you got to flip that and say, okay, it's time to make that change.
Right, right. You had to drop that U-Haul.
I did.
Okay, so just so that our listeners understand, tell us how they can contact you. And some of these courses are self-directed on your website, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Tell us how we can
So,
find you on social
okay.
media.
Sure. So we do have a website. It's earlmorrison.com. If you go on there, you can find that we have several of our classes online. It's self-directed. We also have some group packages that, if groups wanted to do that or churches wanted to do that, they can also do that self-directed. It also tells you how you can bring me in. And then we'll also post that if I'm doing live classes in any area, we'll post it on there so people can sign up. Um,
Mhm.
my niche is law enforcement, but it applies across the board. So I always tell everybody, don't shy away from it, because leadership is leadership. It doesn't matter what group, what uh, organization you're in. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. You can, if you just Google us, Google my name. Um, you can get that on there. You can also email me at earlmorrison.com. Ask any questions. We have forms on there that you can fill out. We'll tailor the instruction in the classes to an organization. If you've got a specific issue, I can tailor anything I have to those individuals.
Okay. All right. So I will put your contact information in the liner notes. But right now, we're at the part of our conversation where I ask you the same 5 questions I ask everyone. Since we're the Healing Words podcast, the first letter from the word words. Now, you've written 3 books, 3 or 4 books, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let's talk about the one that you wrote in 2017 that directly led into your organization. When did you know that you were going to write that book?
So probably just maybe a couple of months, maybe I don't even know if it was a couple of months after I found out that I was not the chief of police anymore. I got resignated. It was trying to find a way to heal. And so probably a couple of months after that, I left there in March. And so I probably began that process. Um, Maybe May-ish. We kind of started the business in June, and then I worked through writing the book and finishing it, and published it in 2018.
Okay, so you were healing while you were writing and writing while you were healing.
Absolutely. It's really what helped me move forward was actually writing the
Okay. Oh, how did you organize your time? Well, you weren't working, so you had the time to write.
book. That's not funny, but okay.
Okay, so let's do a different O then. Um, did you face any, let's talk about the obstacles. Did you have any internal or external obstacles?
I think always when you're getting ready to write a book, you're always wondering, is anybody going to read it? What are they going to think about you when they see this? How are people going to look at you? Especially when you're trying to do the healing piece, I think that's Satan trying to get in there and tell you that you shouldn't do it, that it's going to be junk no matter what. And I think you're always going to have that little bit of doubt. Now, after I did the first one, that never happened again. I never had that same doubt, because it was like, hey, you know what? It may not be for everyone, but for the person that it's for, that's who I wrote it for.
Okay. Or rear view. Now that you know what you know, what would you tell yourself on the day that you found out that you were no longer chief of police?
Trust God.
Mm,
He's got you. Now, the first time, because that was the first time, and it was 11 months before I got the next opportunity. When it hit the second time, it didn't feel the same. It was like, okay, he's going to take care of us. It stung. Now, the third time, this last time, honestly, we were just like, okay, God's got us.
I didn't
What's
know there
next?
was a third. I didn't know there
Uh,
was a third time.
yeah, unfortunately, things come in threes. So the last time here in Oklahoma, it was kind of the same thing. Politics. I'm one of those people that I don't compromise my character, so I call out what's needed to be called out, and I'm a positive person that tries to move things forward. I'm not going to turn the blinds eye to certain things, and so again, sometimes that doesn't align with politics. That doesn't align
Exactly.
with some people's idea of things, and it's one of those that when I say I'm not going to compromise my character, who I am, I promise you, anybody that knows me that's been in any of those organizations where I work, they would tell you that's exactly how I would do it, no matter what. There will be some that would say, "Oh, he's probably done this or whatever." But if you looked at everything the way that people should, part of that goes is because I'm not going to compromise who I am. That doesn't always translate to what's best for me, but it does translate for what's best for the organization and the people that are in that organization.
Okay.
And I say it doesn't translate for what's best for me because people always have an agenda and have politics when you're not one of those that just goes along to get along, or you don't just do whatever they say because they said it. Now,
Right.
if you tell me that and I understand it, it's supposed to be that way and it follows what we're supposed to do, I have no issue with that. But if it doesn't, I can't be the person that I'm supposed to be and just follow that blindly. I'm supposed to tell you that that's not the way we're supposed to do it.
And you
The
have to
results of
say
that
that. Right.
The results of that sometimes are that's not what's best for you, but it is what's best for the organization.
Right. Okay. So, D, I wonder if, I don't know if what happened to you makes it into your training, but when you are telling your story, are there parts that you feel like maybe I should delete this? Maybe this is too personal. Maybe this may come off in a way that I don't want it to come off.
So I'm very careful. I mean, I talk about it, but I try to talk about it not in a way where I'm trying to bash anybody or in a way where I'm trying to say that the city was really bad. Or that, here's the all those choices. I don't look at any of that and blame anyone because God is the one that brought me through that. I'm not where I am today. I don't have the books. I don't have the business. I don't have any of that without God bringing me through the things that He brought me through. I don't have the stuff that I have if I haven't been through any of those things. Because I can talk about being a toxic individual when I was early on as a young supervisor. I can talk about how I got through that. I can talk about how life isn't fair. I can talk about how an expectation was is that I did everything I was supposed to do, and I still ended up without a job 3 times.
Right.
I'm not bitter about that because I tell everybody I don't look back in regret. I look back in reflection for the
Mm,
lesson. You don't look back in regret for the failure. You look back in reflection for the lesson that God was teaching me because He was preparing me for the very moment that I am right now. He was preparing me for that classroom. Because when I start talking about how are you going to sit there and tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about if I'm telling you I've been exactly what I'm talking about? I've been that negative person. Oh, and by the way, I've been through something that's unfair. You're not the only one. You don't have to be a victim. You don't have to be. That's a choice that somebody makes.
right.
God's an overcomer. He gives us the tools to overcome. He prepares us for what He wants us to do. And I tell you, what I tell them is that everything that I've been through is God preparing me to do that. And so I try to be careful. There's sometimes when I feel myself getting close to a topic that I've got to be real careful how I approach that because you don't want to send the wrong message. I've done it enough that I kind of know when I'm getting there. And there's
Hmm.
times you got to know your audience and whether they're going to because again, even when you're talking about your failures, there's people that think, well, oh my gosh, that guy's so conceited and cocky and he's this way. And it's like, no, I'm just confident in my what I do. Is
Right.
that I don't know very many people that can write about their failures and talk about their failures to other people. So if you think that's like cocky or conceited or whatever, I think you might miss what that really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's a necessary part of it because you have to know the process that I've been through to know where you can get. And it's not trying to tell you how good I am, how good I've been, how bad I've been, how good I am now, how good I'm going to be. It's trying to get everybody to see how good you can be.
Right.
How can you process through all your struggles to get to your full potential that God has for you?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm careful, but I don't like. I mean, I bring it all through there, and again, if it comes up, and if someone's, I usually don't say the agencies. I usually don't say names. If people know them, then I try to, we may have a little fun with it, but I try to just say, okay, we got to process.
Yes. Yeah. Get on past that.
Right.
Okay. Yes. Strengthen. How have you been strengthened? How has this journey strengthened you?
Well, I mean, I promise you that my faith, my trust in God is greater now than it was 7 years ago. And I thought it was good 7, 8 years ago because we'd been involved in the church and doing all the things that we did. But it's made me understand the trust and the faith piece more because it's easy when you're going through great things. It's easy when everything you're checking the boxes of everything that you want to accomplish in your life. When you hit that adversity, you hit the things that oh my gosh, you got a dream job, now you don't. You got another chance at it, you don't have it again. You get a third chance, you don't have it again. The only thing that gets you through that is knowing that God's got you no matter what. And you can't just trust him when it feels good. We got to trust him when he says what you wanted is not what I want.
Mm,
And
right.
that's the peace that at the end of the day, there's a freedom in that. There's a
Yeah.
peace that comes with that.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where we're at.
It's a good thing that you did not hinge your identity on being the chief of police, because after the first time, that would have, you know, that was a blow. But then the second time, and then the third, that would have just taken it out then.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
it was tough because the first time when we left, my son was 7. He was 10 the second time. He was almost 8 the first time, but then he was 10. It's that little piece when it's cool that your dad's the chief of police and you got to go tell your 10-year-old son that you're not the chief of police anymore for the second
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
And so in it was like, I never want the job or the title to be my identity.
Right.
And then the third time, I started from the bottom of the organization. We had issues internally. It kind of imploded on itself. I worked myself up to the assistant director position, but I
Mhm.
started at the bottom with zero responsibility and zero supervisory responsibility. And
Mhm.
so always after that, it was cool to be a chief of police. I thought that's what I wanted again, and that was what was God was going to open again. But I don't have to have the title to be who I am.
Mhm.
And that's what I want my kids to know and understand. That's what I want people out there to know and understand because there were people and things that I had in place when I had a title that people were like, oh, okay, hey, come on here, you can teach here, you can do this, we'll let you do this. And then when the title goes, they,
Right.
they don't invite you in as much because it's not fitting the other agenda.
Hmm.
But it doesn't matter because God uses anybody. I mean, we don't have
Absolutely.
to have a title. And so it was important not to hang too much on that. Was it a disappointment? I'd be lying if I told you it wasn't.
Right.
Um, but I don't have to have a title to serve God. I don't have to have a title to be who I am. The only title I need is child of God.
Excellent. You've got that.
I've got that.
Absolutely. This has been a wonderful chat. Thank you so much for dropping by. And I hope all of our listeners go to your website. Again, I'll have that in the liner notes and they can sign up for your courses. And any organization listening can also sign up. Thank you so much, Mr. Morrison.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next time.